Man, I hope y'all are having a good Thursday. You know, the funny thing about doing the schedules is it's the one time I think of the month for myself that my sleep gets thrown off a little bit, which is funny because I have no issue staying up. If I have to get up early, I will. Got the schedules done at a pretty decent hour, but unfortunately got woken up with just family stuff, whatever, just different things around the house. But anyways, man, I hope you guys are having a good Thursday. As you can see on the screen currently, it shows our preseason top 25. You probably see a few CPU teams. What I've done is try to add all of the CPU teams into conferences so that way they'll get knocked out as far as their ranking is concerned. Of course, there are going to be more of those in the Pac-12 as there are in other conferences, just from a beneficial standpoint. We are doing a prize this year, so we did get that started. I talked to, uh, obviously the conversation with our BOD, discussing doing a prize this season. So there's going to be some incentive there for each user, each team that's playing this year. We are also looking at I guess the best way to explain this is everyone kind of has had the question behind okay, like what's the method to the madness? What's the why? How have we gotten here? I've had different conversations with users in regards to that, and the best thing I can tell you is we've been trying to figure out the best way to balance the league, not just based on user skill, but also based on the prestige space, whether it's in the space of recruiting, the competitive aspect of gameplay itself, and then eventually getting to the playoffs, and then figuring out how close we are to the connection to real life. We are not completely there yet. We actually may be very far from it. But all we ask you guys is from now up until the next game that comes out, assuming everyone's still going to be playing and active, that you just be open minded when you see the conference changes. Be open minded when you see your schedules, all those things, because the truth is NCAA doesn't give us a ton of information. Everything is really kind of what we believe or what we think the game is doing. Um, it's always something in that realm, I think, for the most part, when it comes to NCAA and trying to figure out how this game not only plays, but what it means in the long term for each team. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to go through the conference standings, just looking at each conference within the league. Obviously, you're looking at the ACC. Majority of this conference is a Florida-based conference. I can't tell you who came up with that. It was a VOD user, and I like it. I like the conference layout. It's going to be a very competitive space, obviously with Showtime, Fuzz. You've got Roach, who's always been competitive to some regards. Bird, who for the longest part, or at least in the beginning, it felt like he was at the very top of the ACC, or going back and forth with DMAC and Clemson. The addition of Auburn being within this group. I can't remember if it's CJ or JC. I know he has more pauses in the chat than anyone I have ever seen so far within the group. The man lives for the pause moment. And then, of course, you have Young added over here with UCF, which is crazy, by the way, how Auburn's team jumped from where it was to where it is now. And that's why this is the whole. Auburn is a great situation or a great example to me of what I always communicate when it comes to how the progression space doesn't fully make sense from the game standpoint. When that team, all the seniors left that team originally, that team was sitting down at an 81 across the board or an 82, and now they show between an 87 or an 87 overall. So it's just I have no idea what the game does when it comes to the progression space. But again, we're all here to try to learn it together. And then of course you got Juwan. Juwan he had made the request. He wanted he wanted to play against Young. He wanted to play be back in a space with Bird. Maybe probably not the expectation of everyone else that was in the conference, but the ACC is definitely going to be a tough one. Looking over at the Big 12, which is basically a transition between the Big Ten and the Big 12. You have myself over in the Big 12 with Wisconsin. I was stating this earlier in the chat. Like, I don't know how the hell you guys are breaking 90 plus on your teams. I feel like I have lived between 85 and 89 from season to season. It just whatever it is, we're not going to cross that boundary for whatever it is. And of course, you got Penn State with Hendricks. He was in the Big Ten conference game last season. Clemson with DMAC. DMAC was in the playoffs last season. I don't know if he had won the one. I think he lost the conference championship game, but he was in the playoffs, had a decent run. Smitty, originally a Big Ten user, moved over to the SEC, added to the Big 12 to give space for some users that were going to transition over to the SEC. And then, of course, Qua with Washington, kind of sitting in a similar space as myself, where just hasn't really gone up on that ladder when it comes to overall, kind of really staying the same. Ohio State did get a pretty decent boost from what I saw. That team dropped down to about 87, jumped up to 92. And then, of course, you have the rest of the CPUs. As far as this conference, if I would have to start with like 1 and 2, 1 and 2 is definitely going to be between Smitty and DMAC. I don't think anybody's really questioning that. And it's going to come down to obviously the rest of us trying to compete with those guys as they've been somewhat juggernauts in their own right when it comes to league play in the Big 12. In the Big 10, you currently have the fireman himself with Oregon. Obviously, fireman being a defensive player, steady player amongst league play, and then of course you have Legend with A&M. That team has pretty much stayed strong for him for the most part. Legend's been pretty consistent from the recruiting side as well. And then, of course, you have here comes Colton, just slowly but surely building with this Maryland team, trying to get himself into a position where he can be compete in that playoff space. And then, far as Arkansas, I was kind of undecided on where to put our Arkansas user. I'm not sure what his name is. I apologize, and it's sad because he's been in here for quite a while. But I wasn't really sure where to place him. I do know the game places a rivalry between him and Legends team with A&M, so it didn't make a lot of sense to just completely remove because the game just adds them on the schedule anyways. And then of course you have Austin with Colorado in the same situation, building that team, getting to slowly progressing with that situation with Colorado. And then we have Jay Rose with Tennessee. Um, this is a much harder conference than it's probably given enough. There's probably not enough credit given to this conference because, one, just from an overall standpoint, now it may not necessarily be in LOC, but there is comp in KOC. Like, please don't fool yourself. There is a competitive level in that top 15 over in KOC. But you have a guy in Oregon that's played pretty close games. Played a close game against T-Raw, almost came out with that one, fell short. You've got Legend, who's been a playoff, active playoff user within league play. Probably one of the top builders, you'd probably say, within both leagues. He did get a trophy over in KOC with Georgia. And then you have Colton. I think if Colton was in a better situation as some users, he'd probably be sitting over in the SEC right now. He's been a dominant performer himself. The Arkansas user, and again, I meant to turn my comments on, so I don't know if people are typing or not, but the dude is not trash. He's absolutely not trash. He's not somebody that when I looked at his schedule last season, that just goes out has a bunch of games where he gets blown out in. I haven't seen a bunch of that from him. So he's a competitive user in his own right. Obviously, Austin, in I think that first 2 or 3 seasons, one of the seasons he had a game against T Raw, came down to the end. That was his opportunity to get to, I believe, the I believe that was just the first round or the second round of playoffs. That I thought if he won that game, he probably was going to go off to win a natty. Hadn't had the greatest success, I'd probably say in his own for him in his own regard. But again, everyone kind of sees their situation. It's different. Jay Rose did win a natty over in KOC with Florida, and it does look like he's trying to build and kind of trying to maintain a similar production with Tennessee. So we'll see how this one plays out. Going over to the Pac-12, and yes, as I stated within the chat, I know there was a lot of people that when they got up in the chat, they were looking at this conference and they're just going, "Oh, you got all these users over here," and obviously everyone has their opinion when it comes to a conference. At the end of the day, guys, what you're going to have to understand, especially for myself and the rest of the BOD, is that ultimately this is about the community space and activity. How do we maintain activity for as long as we can? Keep multiple users in spots that are open and willing to play. And to be honest, or to be very truthful, with this group, for the majority of them, they have been active. They've probably been the more active of the group when it comes to gameplay. They're actually probably the least part of the group that we've actually had to go in and consider a forced win or forced loss, for the most part. And then we again looking at the aspect of real life. Not every conference in the NCAA in real life is based around the greatest teams or situations, all in are spread out amongst the NCAA college football in real life. So there's kind of a similar layout that we have here. You got Rome at UCLA, Nebraska, obviously King 504. Expecting a lot out of Twist with Utah, Eastside sitting there with USC. He could potentially be dominant. Frizzle's going to get an opportunity here with Missouri. And then, of course, Michigan State is going to be sitting here for J-Stack. With this conference, for me, I don't really have a number one and number two. My expectation is that it's going to be King 504, probably against Frizzle. But again, it just depends on how this plays out because everyone's situation looks a little different now. They get an opportunity to play against each other and really compete and be in a situation where they can actually impact and make changes for themselves for the long term with their teams. Last but not least, definitely not least, is the SEC. And man, let me tell you, when we first got ready to put this together last season, there was a lot of pushback for even in the BOD. This was not an easy guys understand this was not the easiest transition to make when it comes to league play because ultimately you do want to keep a space that is as balanced as possible. But like I said, this isn't something we'll probably do next year where we just switch all the time. We're on the back end of the game, trying to give everyone an opportunity to at least have a situation to build. And this conference, for the most part, is pretty much elite. Ole Miss has a natty. T. Raw is currently sitting in the GOAT position. Vic has a natty. King 504. King Kai has been to a national championship. He was dominant over in the Big 12. He's had multiple playoff appearances. Gideon making a natty this season, losing out to Mark, who did get a natty this season. And then obviously the outlier is going to be TCU for Ben, which I'll admit he's going to be in a tough spot. But this conference for me was just like it was difficult to put together last season, it's the same for this one because, again, you want the best players to play and compete. But again, how it works out in real life, if you think about real life setup, in a lot of ways, most of the 5-star schools, most of the better situations in college currently are most likely in that SEC. It's not in the Big 12 or those other conferences. This is typically the SEC is typically the strongest place to play in league play. Um, as far as expectation on who's going to do what, I'm just going to tell you right now, I have no damn clue when it comes to the SEC because I've seen Vic play well. I've also seen Vic have a bunch of seasons where he struggled with Alabama. I've seen King Kai play well with Texas, and then at the same and in the same breath, I've seen him have situations against competitive, similar situations for himself with Texas, where he hasn't probably performed where he desires to be. I've seen Gideon have multiple seasons where he, for example, wins a conference championship, and then all of a sudden get into the playoffs and struggle. So there's just a lot of variables here. Oklahoma, same thing. You know, being able to dominate back and forth in the Big 12, coming over to the SEC, making it really on a wing and a prayer, if I'm going to be honest, last season with Oklahoma, and then being able to go on the run he did, not going from the Big 12 to the SEC and winning a chip. That was a big deal. Ben's made a conference championship, so it's not like he's just a user that's a complete. He's just going to fall off the map when it comes to the SEC. I expect him to compete. I don't know if he's going to win any games necessarily over here, but he was open to the change. So that's kind of where we are, and we're just kind of going from there. So those are the conferences of league play. Going over to the schedules, I'm going to take a quick break, but what I want to explain really quick, this is probably the most challenging the schedules were for me, um, doing them season to season, because for the most part what we were able to get right was getting the rivalries in position, um, as far as the CPU games, to make sure people didn't have all the additionals. Hence why you see in the SEC why you have Stanford, Navy, and those teams, because the game for whatever reason just wants to give Notre Dame 5 games a season. Like, it is what it is. I hate it. It's no fault of Gideon's. With that, it's just how the game plays it out. I'm gonna take a quick break, and then I'm gonna allow the schedules to play through. Again, we're not advancing until 5 o'clock because I do want to make sure that I can take a second look at the schedules, mainly from the space of a competitive standpoint. Um, Not necessarily the home and away games. Some people are just locked. Like Georgia, I feel so bad for Showtime. I think it's Showtime and Ohio State that they are basically living on the road. Like the game said, you sir, pack your bags because you will not be home this season. So I'm gonna take a quick break and then I'll let them roll. Be right back. All right. So, like I said, I'm gonna get this started when it comes to the conferences. The schedules itself. I'm not going to do a whole bunch of communication. I'm literally just going to do my best to just kind of let this thing roll. Again, my expectation, like always, there's going to be some opinions in the chat, in regards to in the chat. Somebody just said me and Ben are beefing. We are definitely not beefing. Actually, prayers to Ben. He's got a tough week this week coming up, just with family and everything. So, but like I said, I'm gonna let this thing roll. What you see, just don't be alarmed. Just don't be alarmed. Just hey, this game is about winning your conference. It is not about the entirety of your schedule. So I'm gonna let this thing roll, and then we'll be done with the show. Man, I hope you guys have a blessed day. Take care of your mentals. Spend some time with your family. Mark, get away from the damn game, bruh. Go throw the football with your son or something. Go do, man. Like, enjoy your family this summer, dog. We're about to let it roll. All right, all right. Well, that is the schedules, everybody. Like I said, and I don't know if you saw. I don't know if you saw in there, but I actually just made a change to Gideon's schedule because, and this is why I said I'm trying to take my time with this because of the conference changes. For whatever reason on the game, it'll do stuff like for example, it would put this as a versus. I've saved it 1,000 times. He does not. No one deserves that many home games in a row, but it is what it is. It's how the game plays out. So hopefully it saves, um, and then he doesn't get all those get all that benefit, especially being over in the SEC. But that's the schedule. Again, the goal is to not advance until 5. I don't know if you noticed, but for the majority, nobody that is a 5-star user currently, nobody that is a 5-star user has a week 3 home game. That was done strategically. So it's because I already know I get the messages or we get the responses about, you know, why don't I have a week 3 game, blah 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 blah, or the home and away. We're trying to figure out the best way to just balance this thing out. So again, man, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. I'm gonna get ready for this work call here in about 15 minutes. And then once I am able to jump back in, myself, I think Legend's going out of town this weekend. So again, uh, as the BO from just speaking from the BOD team, we appreciate you guys more than it is that we can't stand you. There are times where we can't stand you, but we definitely appreciate you guys from an activity standpoint, being connected, and just ultimately desiring to compete. And taking the game somewhat serious. Let me not just say serious, but just playing the games with the intent to win and to produce. So ultimately, that's really all it is. If you could see, there was a prize placed for $200 for this season. That's going to be this season only. So hey, may the best man win. Take care of your mentals. Spend time with your family. Do not spend all day in front of your PlayStation. Go outside and walk for 20 minutes. Do something. All right, man. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.